Welcome to the Boosted Volunteer Podcast. We share the stories of dedicated Booster Club volunteers and the tools and strategies they use to run successful booster clubs. We also have sought-out experts on fundraising, volunteer management, and running nonprofits to share best practices. Hosted by Robin Eissler and Evan Eissler, you won't want to miss these great episodes that will help you run your booster club like a champ.
Hi, it's Robin Eissler, founder of Booster Hub and your host for the Boosted Volunteer. Today, I'm really excited to host Scott Garvis on our podcast. He's a certified master athletic administrator and has served as the athletic director at multiple high schools for the past 20 years and is currently the activities director at Newton High School in Iowa. He's also an executive board member for the National High School Athletic Coaches Association, and he has a podcast, Beyond the Bench, and has written several books on leadership for athletic directors and has a lot of great tips for sports and athletics leaders and booster club leaders. So really excited to have him and hear all the great tips that he has. So hi, Scott. We're happy to have you today on the Boosted Volunteer.
Well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate the opportunity to share with you today.
Well, you've got years of hosting your Beyond the Bench podcast and talking with hundreds of athletic directors across the country. What do you see and what have you learned about the challenges that most athletic directors face when working with booster clubs? Are there any recurring themes that keep coming up that you see over and over again? We'll dive right in there.
Yes, I think there's a lot of things that ADs really struggle with. And I think if you look at the data, it will show that one of the things that's really hard is just finding good quality people that are going to help. Obviously, athletic departments can't run on an athletic director alone. They need an army of people, and our booster clubs are essential in that. I think one of the things that ADs struggle with is finding great quality coaches. They struggle with budgets, obviously. They struggle finding people to work at games. Volunteers are tougher and tougher to come by. I was actually reading some research here that said since COVID, volunteerism was down 27%. So ADs continue to find struggles in just this people power. So obviously the Booster Club can be a great resource for people power, as well as Robin developing athletic funds for their athletic department. So I think that's probably some of the big things that ADs are dealing with. And again, going back to just finding good quality coaches and retaining good quality coaches. I think one thing we've seen over the last 30 years in my time in being in athletics is those coaches that coach from the time they start to being a teacher till they retire. We don't see those like we used to. We don't see teachers/coaches. I think when I first started, according to NFHS, did some research, 80% of coaches were teachers 30 years ago. Now I think 70% of our coaches nationwide are coming from outside of the teacher and education world. So we've seen this huge shift over the last 30 years. Now we've seen some good things happen in that 30 years too, but those have been some things that have changed drastically. And I think all that can lead back to how can booster clubs help support athletic directors, help us support coaches, because there is this just difference of what coaching was 30 years ago and now.
Well, I think difference in coaching, but also difference from the fan experience. So I was doing some research as we were getting ready to have you on today, and you talked a couple of years ago with the owner of Savannah Bananas and how they were talking about it's all about the fan experience. And now athletic directors, boosters, coaches, you can't just have a football game, right? You've got to have the band there and you've got to have concessions, and it can't just be little concessions. You got to have good concessions. And if you're good enough, you're going to have some sort of extra thing. So what does that pressure look like?
I think we could say over the last 30 years, the role of the athletic director has really changed. And I think that's one of them. It's really providing, I think ADs, we make moments for our community. We make moments for our student athletes. We make moments for our coaches. So I think as an athletic director, that is something that is important to me, that we're making positive memories for student athletes, memories for coaches, memories for our parents, because I share this with parents all the time. By the time our kids get to 7th grade, they have spent 75% of the time they're going to spend with us. And that time becomes less and less and less as they get older. And I've seen that now with my own kids. And every year I share that, I see the moms and the dads start kind of tearing up a little bit because that time with our kids in high school is so precious. And the time that we get to spend with our kids is coming to an end as they hit that high school age. And so parents being involved in booster clubs, having the opportunity to, again, we talked about that people power. We really need parents to be involved in that because we can't make those memories by ourselves. Those booster club and other people that we have involved. I talked about in my fundraising book, I talked about we need an army. We need an army of people to make this happen. And it doesn't happen with one person. It takes an army of people to make those memories for kids. And obviously, unfortunately, that all takes money, whether we're doing video boards or we're raising money for the banners for our seniors, or if it's getting our senior gifts, or as you said, Robin, if it's providing something special at the concession stand. Like I always remember when I was in Muscatine, everybody came to our event and they're always like, we had this muskie chop and we worked with our local Hy-Vee and they provided this special, and people, whenever they came to Muscatine, they wanted to get that muskie chop because that was like a big thing, a signature sandwich for our booster club. So how can we continue to make events special for our kids, for our coaches, but then that fan experience? How are we making that for our fans? So whether it's providing them entertainment during the game, whether that's, I remember I had a group of kids and I was like, hey, what is going to excite you about coming to games? Because one of the things when I got hired was like, kids aren't coming to our games anymore. So I met with our kids and I said, what does that look like you? For like, would be really cool if we had a DJ that we could request music for the game. So actually hired a DJ that had set up, and I told them, I go, okay, obviously we have to have school appropriate songs, but if there are things we can share and the kids get into that, and that was huge. The kids loved that. How can we provide them opportunities to lead in that? One of the things we talked about is sportsmanship has become a huge piece of event management and having a safe environment for our students and student athletes and our fans. So how do we work with our student athletes? I think sometimes as adults, we forget that this experience is for our kids. How can we make it student focused? Because we get community members, parents all like, well, I want this and I want that. And I'm like, okay, let's bring it back to make sure that we're student focused. What do our kids want to see? We're creating these memories for our kids. And sometimes as adults, and even myself, we're like, well, this would be easier or this would be best. But then we got to think, okay, what do our 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, what's going to make a memory, a positive memory for them? And I think for me, that has been having Student Athletic Advisory Council has been huge for me. I always tell ADs that's one of the things that brings me kind of back to my coaching and having relationships with kids and having the opportunity to get their feedback, because I tell them all the time, this is inevitably all for you. We're buying these videos, we're building these facilities, we're buying these uniforms because of what you want. So how do we get them involved and have them play a leadership role in making memories, making moments, having fan experiences, having experiences for our student athletes? Trying to make them a part of that, I think, is really important.
I think you're exactly right. It's all about the kids. I know at our volleyball games with the players, like one of the most important things was they got their little volleyballs that they got to put on and they got to throw them into the stands. And during COVID, there was some question about whether or not we were going to be able to do it. And the players went crazy. They're like, that's like the whole reason I come to the game, is to throw my ball out there. So it's important to find out what excites the kids and what makes the kids really want to be there.
Absolutely.
We also had another thing we did at our school, at our volleyball games. It really made a huge difference. It was not a silly thing, but a simple thing. We invited the choir or choir members to sing the national anthem. So instead of playing recorded national anthem, we had a live singer. And it was like all it required was coordination between the two groups. But it made a huge difference in how the event felt. Whether we're playing this recorded bad version of the, national anthem versus the live singer, it was substantial.
Yeah, and it's awesome when you can have, I always think it's really cool when the pep band's playing and you have a student that sings the national anthem. All those, and they're very simple things. They absolutely make those special moments. And again, not only for our student athletes, but for our kids in general. How can we have different clubs in our school involved? How can we have different events? Like one thing that we did that was really cool is at the beginning of the year, we actually brought all of our student athletes together at our fall kickoff event, announcing all of our coaches, all of our students, whether they're involved in a fall sport or not, and then coming together and talking about and having our kids read our collective commitments for the year and having them understand and realize this, we're all in this together, and have as many different organizations, different clubs, activities, fine arts, athletics, all involved so that we all feel like we're on one team is so important.
Yeah, it's really all about the community as a whole. And when you do those cross promotions, now you've got the choir parents coming to the
Yeah.
game, the football fans coming out to the volleyball game, and you can do a lot of that cross promotion. Well, you've got all this experience in leading an athletic program and probably a lot of experience working with booster clubs. So what's
Yes.
kind of your ideal relationship of and the athletic directors don't work, depending on the school, may work directly or maybe at the coach level. It's a very delicate relationship. So describe your kind of ideal. This is what it should look like. This is how they should interact. This is how they should be structured.
I think for me, I've been truly super lucky. Every place I've been, I've had amazing booster clubs. And whether that's an all sports booster club or football, volleyball, and I've
Well,
been
let's
lucky.
let's
Yeah.
dive in right there. Give me your take on each of those because we see them both. And
And,
what's
and
good, bad, and ugly on both of those?
I would simply say this. I think when we have separate booster clubs, we're all duplicating work, different 501c3s. So for me, it's having one all sports booster club. That doesn't mean that we can't have a group of football parents do something for the football team, but having one 501c3, having one money, having all these different checks and balances, because obviously I've been involved in this a long time and we've had some singular booster clubs that have had people and take money. It's just part of the reality of the world we're in. And I don't think that's ever changed. So just having an overall that can do some checks and balances so that and again, too, just for Title IX reasons, I think that's important too, so that we understand how much are we spending on girls programs? How much are we spending on the boys programs? And having everybody sit in the room together, I think it kind of, for me, it's showing that there's more than just one team. Because I think a lot of times it's like football team gets everything and nobody else gets anything. And you hear that all the time too. So when we're all in the same room and can share best practices, share like an accountant, having our taxes done, there's just a lot of benefits from that I see sitting in the chair for as long as I have that you can see like it's really benefits the overall school, the overall athletic department, the overall activity department. And I think inevitably, although parents are focused on whatever their kids are out for, which is great. We ask our coaches to do the same thing. I think they get a little bit broader perspective when we all can sit in the room together.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. It is, we do see it. People like to support their kids' sports, so those individual ones are great, but it is a lot of duplication of effort, particularly on the accounting and the compliance side and things like that. And then I'd imagine as an AD, if you've got 15 or 22 different booster clubs, you've got groups of people you're having to communicate with, making it more complicated.
And I would say this too. I think one thing that I've seen with an overall sports booster that has some subsidiaries underneath it, I really think that, again, for the AD, having one meeting, having the kids be able to have a voice within those meetings is important too. Having coaches involved, not all the time. Like we typically would have our coaches come in after each season, thank our booster club for everything they do and the money that they provide, I think is really important. But again, I think for me, the booster clubs having the ability to share those resources is really important, especially when it comes. I've had a lot of booster clubs, and Robbie, you probably heard this story too. I've had a lot of booster clubs, like some parent is gung ho and they go out and they go and set up their booster club account and they don't have a 501c3, and then tax season comes and they're like, oh, you've got $10,000 in this account here. You have to pay taxes on that. Like, whoa, that was a booster club. Oh, well, did you set up a 501c3? And then you're seeing compliance issues. And then this parent who is really trying to do a good thing for kids ends up having to come up with $2,000 or something
And
to pay taxes. And then you just hate to see that. So really as an AD, educating our parents on what that looks like and why it's so important to have 501c3, have all those things in the compliance, as you stated, Robin, in place so that our parents that are trying to do good thing don't end up having issues like that. And I've had that happen.
We have people come to us all the time and they say, well, I'm incorporated in this state as a nonprofit, so I don't have to pay taxes. And, it negates two things. One is it actually becomes taxable income for whoever the board of directors are. And two is your donors aren't going to be very happy because it's not a qualified charitable expense if they donated money. So you've got to have that IRS 501c3 certification. But yeah, it can be a lot. And then there's things like sales tax. There's all these things that as boosters have grown and their revenues have grown, the tax agencies look a little closer.
And there's some states too that it doesn't matter if you're a booster club, you still have sales tax that you have to pay. I mean, there's every state's a little different too. And so that's important. So probably like for people that are educating booster clubs like yourself and other entities out there, like it's important that our boosters know those tax implications, know that compliance that comes with that, knowing there are, regardless of a booster club is donating the money or not, the school still has to comply with Title IX too.
How's that managed? I've never dug very deep in that, but how do you manage that when the football booster club's raising 200,000 a year and the rest are all doing 50,000 all put together cumulatively?
And that, again, I think that comes down to why it's so important to have one, so that you can have a little bit more of some compliance that was in regard with that. I think, and I know some states require that they fill out how much do you spend on sport. I will tell you one thing I did that was really very beneficial for me is I did a cost per pupil. So I brought in revenues, expenses, how many student athletes we had out. And I actually came back like, okay, here's how much we're spending on per football player, per dancer, per cheerleader, per student that's involved in adapted sports. So it gave me a little bit better gauge of how we're spending our money and how we can better fit the Title IX compliance and make sure that we're spending funds and allocating funds the way we need to. And it helped me honestly to go to our boosters and say, here's how we want to accept this money and put it in the programs that needs it. So we have our coaches they turn over their budget to me in like December, January, so they can have everything ready for spring. And we can go to our boosters and like, this is everything that we need. Here's how much money we allocated to each sport that we got from our booster club. And again, I think that adds a level of transparency. Boosters, here's what your money's actually paying for. And I think it's good for our people that donate to see like, oh, wow, like they can be a part of and be connected to. Like I helped the girls cross country team raise money for those new sweats or those new outfits, or gosh, the booster club provided a video board and here's a picture of it. And thank you to our community and the people who actually donates that. That visual connection, I think, is really important too, especially if you're out trying to raise money, to have items that you're trying to go after so that people like, oh, I really want to help the football team. They don't have any money for footballs this year, or team doesn't have money for, I mean, it's crazy what schools are having to raise money for now because the schools just don't have the funds to cover that. So you see booster clubs buying golf balls, softballs, baseball, like just necessities that you'd think are like, oh, that's just covered.
Yeah.
But schools don't even have the money to cover.
The burden's really been shifted over to the booster clubs, really in sports and in fine arts with the marching band. Yeah. It's more and more, which is then puts more pressure on them to fundraise and be organized and do all of that. It's a whole industry now, if you will.
And I think it becomes overwhelming for parents and for students. Like, oh, I'm out for basketball. I got to fundraise it. My daughter's in band. I got to fundraise for band. We're going to Florida next year. We got to fundraise for that. So like their kids and parents are getting bombarded from every single activity they're involved with. They're getting parted with fundraising.
I think one of the differences too, though, we've also, as we talked about earlier, we've pushed the experience. We've pushed it so that we've got football teams now having a game in Hawaii, season, or you're traveling out of state, which would have been unheard of for high school sports 20 years ago or something.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. It just changed. And I think the expectations have changed. I can think of when I started back in 1999, the role of the AD is now fundraiser. Typically, ADs are teaching or they're administrators. So they don't have just one job. They have 2 or 3 jobs within a school. And then there's a sports information director. They're sending out social media posts. They are like, a game is not just a game anymore. It's an event.
Right.
So like, oh, we're getting bouncy houses and we're doing light shows and we're setting up preseason hype videos. There are so many more things to administrate and to relegate, make sure that we're in compliance with things. So many more things now than there were when I first started.
Yeah, I can imagine just the digital media alone is a full, you need not just one person, probably 3 people in a department just to manage all of that. And if you're not doing it, you're behind because everybody else is doing it, right?
Right. Keeping up with the Joneses.
Got to have that hype video, you
That's
know?
right. There's no doubt. And kids love it too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the kids love to be involved in those things and they like making those videos, but it comes with cost typically if you're not doing it on your own. They're not cheap. If you get a videographer, everything costs money. Nothing's free.
One of my best booster club tips that I've ever done is our program. We were fundraising during COVID, and so it was really hard to do. But we had our team, our players go out and make TikTok style videos
Yeah.
for all of our sponsors.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
That's
then we posted it on social media, and it was the players were involved and they were promoting the sponsors. And the quality of the video that the girls came up with was so good. They're so much better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, these were like little 30-second commercials that were
Yeah.
awesome for the sponsors. And we had sponsors calling us saying, "Hey, how do we get on your list? We'd like to
Yeah,
get
right.
one of those videos."
That's awesome when those kids can do that. But again, COVID was a great time to be able to do things like that because typically those kids who are involved in sports are not just involved in sports, but they might be speech and debate, they might be in band, they might be in choir. And I just think our kids are stretched so thin these days because
Yeah.
it just seems everything's all season. There's no breaks anymore. If you're a basketball player, you're doing basketball stuff all year. If you're playing soccer, it's soccer all year. And if I'm out for multiple sports, now I'm in soccer, basketball, I'm in band, I'm in speech and debate. I want to be on the science club. These kids are they're going from 5 a.m. till 11, 12 o'clock at night because then they get home from a game or band practice or an event and then they have to do their homework. It's just, I think one thing that we need to be cognizant of as parents and ADs and coaches is our kids are overcommitted in so many things because we want them to be involved, but to have them involved means everybody's expecting so much more of them than they were expecting 30 years ago.
Yeah. It used to be 2 hours after school was a sport, and now it's 6 days a week, if not 7, and you have to have your coach outside of school, and it's crazy. Well, what do you see between the ADs and the booster clubs? Sometimes there can be friction, sometimes there can be, "We don't agree," or what's your viewpoint on that, and what does that look like in practice when things get a little bumpy between the 2?
Obviously, it typically all comes down to money and how resources are used. So again, I think being really transparent with your booster club about here's where the funds are going. Anytime I've seen issues, and again, I've been so lucky on this side of this. I have rarely had issues other than when parents feel like they need to fire a coach. Other than that, but as far as booster club and really the main function of it, I've been super lucky. But being transparent, open lines of communication are so important. I always went to our booster club meetings, made sure I was part of those meetings. And again, for me, it was like, how can I help drive forward our goals? I was really proud of the fact when I first got to Newton, I think the first year I got here, we raised like 30 grand. By the time we went through that, we were getting up to where we were up at the 100,000+ raising money each year. So I was really proud of the fact that we worked together for the benefit of the student athletes and made sure that we were providing the best possible experience we could for our student athletes. And what did that mean? Again, I think people power is the big thing about booster clubs. How can we leverage relationships in our community? One thing I always bring to our sponsors and to our partners is I say this: 77% are more likely to use a good or service within your community if you're affiliated with your local high school, activities, athletics, whatever that might be. So many different things I learned through writing my book about the power of the local high school and the impact it has on the marketing capabilities that a booster club and a high school have within a community, especially if it's not a huge community, as super, super powerful.
I called a tow truck about 4 months ago. Now, I haven't run a booster club in, 6 years now, and had to call a tow truck. And I literally, during my years in the booster club, we had 3 tow companies as sponsors, and I called all 3 of them. And it was the third one that the first 2 didn't have a truck, but I got to the third one, and it was from 6 years ago. But those
Yeah.
were the ones that were top of my mind. I'm going to call these guys who sponsored our volleyball booster club, and they paid, I don't know, $250 or something to have a banner in our gym. And 6 years later, I'm remembering it.
And Robin, that story is so powerful because we are so loyal as booster clubs to those people who support our kids. So this is another great statistic for booster clubs. The loyalty rate, NASCAR is kind of seen as the gold standard for their customer loyalty. High schools blow it out of the water. So that that loyalty, that brand recognition and the loyalty to those businesses in your community who support band, choir, vocal music, whatever that might be within your school, people have that loyalty. And that's a great story that just shows that is so, so true.
Yep, absolutely. It's amazing what it means when you support somebody's kid, right? Like
Yeah,
that's game changing, right?
absolutely. Well, our most prized possessions
Yeah, that's
is
right.
our kids.
You've emphasized providing training for booster clubs. What kind of training do you recommend? What format? Do you have a style or a template that you use? And what things do you cover in that training?
I think one of the biggest things is, and Robin, you've already mentioned the importance of the compliance, just making sure people understand and realize nonprofit taxes being filed. All those compliance things I think are so important because at the end of the day, you've got all these volunteer people. And again, I bring that back to why I think it's important to have an overall umbrella organization that can help. We talked about partners and sponsors. One of the big sponsors we had was the accountant and tax provider that we had. They provided all of our tax resources, make sure our taxes were done, make sure we were compliant. And that was a big booster of ours for our booster club. And it was just an in-kind donation that they did that for us. But man, that was huge that we had somebody who was an expert that, again, we weren't having to rely on a parent that was having to figure out all the accounting. And I mean, parents have jobs, they're going to watch their kids, they're trying to, and then go and do something else that maybe not isn't really in their wheelhouse is difficult. So I think for me, it's just making sure that number one, with compliance, we've got our taxes, we've got our processes and structures in place. And then again, making sure that our booster clubs are aware of what are our goals? Why do we really have a booster club? And again, it's to support our coaches, support our student athletes, and providing them as good of an experience as we can within our community. And sometimes those resources are limited.
Yeah, it's definitely important that they know. I think when you see the big picture rather than just your lane, then you've got a better idea of, oh, this is why we're doing this process, or this is why we have to submit this form and go through this craziness anytime we want to spend money or things like that once people see the big picture. Along the way, what are some of the bloopers and mistakes that you've seen made in how maybe the athletic directors handle the situation? I know we talked about parents wanting to fire coaches. We see that one all the time. Uh,
And again, at the
Not
end of the
funny,
day,
and it's not it shouldn't be funny.
no, but it just happens. And I think it's just making sure that we have standards in place and we talk about those things that are just upfront. And I think like everything that we do, making sure that everybody knows what our mission, our vision, our core values are, we can always bring it back to that. How are we making our kids' experiences excellent? How are we pursuing excellence? How are we allowing our student athletes to pursue excellence? I always talk to our booster club about making sure like, hey, it's not just that we're just feeding our kids. How are we providing our kids resources for leadership development, skill development, however that might look? How are we trying to improve our students beyond just providing them food all the time? I think that's one thing that I saw as an AD that I always was like, okay, can we spend money on things that are going to make our kids better? Whether it was either on the athlete development side or it was on the character development side or if it was on the leadership. So I actually asked my booster club, like, can I get every year, just get, here's how much money I'd like to see in like a leadership development or character development. So our kids can go to leadership conferences or we can bring a speaker in, always having the ability to not just feed them all the time, but also provide them things that are going to make them better people with something. But bloopers, I know I talked a little bit earlier about parents going and starting a booster club and not having the things really in place that they needed and having things in place. Or we try something new. I know like a lot of parents are like, well, if we let the kids in for free to a game, they'll come. And I've never seen that work. What we need to work with our kids to make sure that what are we going to provide at the game, the experience that's going to want them, they're going to want to come and have fun and be around their friends. How can we, as you said, Robin, at the beginning of the show is just provide them an experience that they're going to be like, okay, I want to be there and have fun with my friends and whatever we can do at that game to do that, I think is important. So trial and error, we're always going to run into bumps along the way and we can always go back and review what we've done and try to make it better. I think that's one thing I've seen too with booster clubs. How can we change things up, switch things up, make sure we're keeping things fresh? Because sometimes we kind of get into a rut. We're just going to do the same thing all the time. And everybody's like, oh, we did that 20 times. Let's do something else.
I like how you mentioned the free ticket doesn't really get people excited.
No.
funny. We find that in software all the time is that if it's free, people don't adopt it. If they pay
Yep.
for it, they'll adopt it. It's an
Yep.
interesting concept. But on free tickets, I laugh because we didn't do free tickets at our volleyball game, but one night we did free hot dogs for the students.
Yep.
And we had a packed house, like free hot dog that cost us 50 cents. We
Yep.
had a jam-packed audience of students for those free hot dogs. I never would have guessed that.
One thing that we did our elementary nights, and we'd go to the schools and our athletes would read to our elementary kids, and then they'd give them a ticket to the game, and with a paid parent, kid got in free. We can do things like that, but like free hot dogs or a popcorn or things like that are always things that we can entice people. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people are wanting to come just see our kids see success and see them have the opportunity to be successful on the court or the field or the stage or wherever that might be.
Let's visit a little bit on technology. So it's become you can't run an athletic department now without some sort of app or tool. And what impact has that had on how the booster clubs operate and in general, how the athletic departments operate? And how do you manage it? Because there's an overwhelming, you could have 40 different apps in one athletic department.
Yeah, I think it's important. Obviously, technology has changed so much over the last 30 years, and it's made our jobs easier, but at the same time, it's made our jobs more difficult because we're managing so many different softwares. But again, it all comes down to how can we be effective and efficient? How can we use that for compliance? How can we use that to be more organized? Or whether that's getting people to sign up for volunteer opportunities, communication obviously has been a huge piece of our booster clubs and how we interact. Software that helps us raise funds with technology, how it keeps us organized. And even as far as just on the communication side, how are we reaching out to people that are potential donors? I think one thing that we miss in high school sports a lot is how are we reconnecting and re-engaging our alumni? I don't know that we do a good enough job of that. How do we connect with our alumni? How do we bring them back? And I feel like that's something that we probably have never been good at. We've really tried to be better at how do we bring alumni back? We do in the summertime, we bring our alumni back and we actually have the opportunity for them to be part of the Hall of Fame. Every time we bring them back, they talk about how it was either a coach or a teacher or a sponsor or a director, somebody who had an impact on them that changed their life or made them interested in, like we inducted a gentleman who works at Michigan State and he's like a famous biologist and he does tons of cancer research. And he goes, if it wasn't for my biology teacher in high school, I would have never, ever thought that this could be a career of mine. And it changed. Or a football coach. And it wasn't about the wins or losses or the trophies. It was like, God, I had one kid come back. He goes, hey, my coach, came up in a single parent home and coach always made sure I had something to eat, made sure I had a ride home. If I ever had problems, he was there for me. Those are the type of stories that I love to hear. And that's the impact that athletics and activities has on a high school kids. Again, like their memories, it changes their life into what they could be and what they can do. And I think coaches and teachers show kids, they might not see something that they could be really good at, but a teacher or coach says like, hey, you know what? You should look into doing this. And the kid's like, I can't do that. And then that's what they end up pursuing. And they end up having this amazing career because somebody opened their eyes to maybe something they didn't even see themselves. That's what's super rewarding for me in this is just seeing kids go off and go to college and then they become the best at whatever they're doing. And I love seeing on social media, like I just had a student of mine who just got a job at the University of Iowa in their athletic department, or I see kids are having kids of their own. And it's just cool to see that progression from high school to life.
I always tell people that, of course, the alumni are great, but the parents of the alumni, the ones who were your boosters, they're entering the stage of life where their kids are gone. And
Yeah,
there's this
great
huge
point.
opportunity to keep them engaged. Get
Absolutely.
them back at the school volunteering and donating and all of that because we're empty nesters now, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm in that stage. The kids are off at college or beyond, and I'd love to go work a concession stand shift.
It's not even just money too, Robin. You know, like you said, it's the people, the man hours, the concession stand worker, the ticket takers, helping out at events or at a cross country meet. Hey, will you be the person that just points the kids in the right direction so they don't get off course? It takes so many people. Like the other day, I was like counting out like how many people it took to run a football game. You know, and you start thinking about officials, coaches, band directors, dance directors, chain crew, spotters, stat takers. You're getting like I have 100 people working at a football game, like
Yeah.
really easy. Concession stand. There's 25, 30 people working the concession stand alone.
Yeah, and you probably have multiple concession stands if you're
Yeah,
anything
right,
like right? And it doesn't count the guy that came in early and stocked everything,
right.
right?
Stocked everything. Started the grill, got the hamburgers and brats and hot dogs ready. It takes a village to do some of these events.
Well, I'm gonna flip this a little bit on its head, but if you're giving advice to a new booster club member and they're coming in first time, they're trying to get the lay of the land, try to understand how to work with the school contacts, what's your advice? What should they do?
I think ADs do not hear this much. Hey, how can I help? I think if any booster club's starting out, how can we help? How can we support? I mean, that's going to start for me. That would be like, it'd be kind of refreshing as an AD to hear somebody's like, hey, how can we help? We want to try to help the athletic department. That just starts it off on a positive note. It's not well, you're not doing this, so we're going to take this over. How can we help? I think that's a big thing. And then, Robin, as we've talked about, just that compliance piece and people understanding that gosh, we want to make sure that we're doing this the right way so that we don't have somebody who's trying to do a good thing end up being in a financial pinch because of not following tax law or 501c3 status, or if they're paying somebody, making sure it's all up and up so that we're not paying people that should be taxed on something else, and W-9s and W-2s and all those things that we get into.
Yeah, it's a whole complex web of problems, that's for sure, if you're not careful.
And the more money that you have and the more people you have involved, the more complex it obviously becomes. And especially if your booster club is like one of those booster clubs that's paying coaches stipends, that
Mhm.
gets super, so I would always tell people, make sure that you're working with your athletic department, especially if you're raising money to pay people or booster clubs are paying coaches. Make sure that you're really dotting your I's and crossing your T's.
Yeah. Well, you do a lot of consulting work and help ADs manage their departments and their growth and booster clubs. What's one thing that you would say directly to the AD on, hey, here's the number one thing you need to do with your booster club?
I just think it's any touch point that you can have to make a positive connection with a parent within your school, do that. And sometimes that's social media, like it's just going up and talking to people, attending those booster club meetings, having an open mind, listening to new ideas, offering perspective, but just being able to be a sponge at sometimes. And we're all guilty. Like I'm not always perfect at that either, but trying to just be a good listener and also sometimes taking criticism as just a learning experience and trying to get better. Because it's easy in the athletic director role to take things personal because this is your life 24/7. I think it's hard for some people to understand the role of an AD because they are connected to their job 24/7. The bus breaks down at 2 a.m. on the way home. They're calling the AD. There's a complaint about some kid over the weekend that got trouble. They're calling the AD. It's never stops. There's no vacation where you can just shut off for 2 weeks and just go away. There's always going to be something going on. There's always going to be a crisis or something going on. It's hard. So for the ADs, I say, just know that you are appreciated. There's people out there that really do really care about what you do. But also on the other side for booster club members, just know that this is a super hard job because you're, again, dealing with kids and parents love their kids and they want the best for their kids. So they are passionate about that. So it's just, there needs to be a good give and take.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex relationship. And I think for the booster volunteers, sometimes it's easy to come in and say, you're doing all this wrong. And let me tell you how it's
Yes.
been. And also forgetting that the school official, whether it be an AD or coach or band director, they're answering to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And you've got one perspective. Be sure to consider the others.
And I think too, for booster club members, just remembering like school law, finance is different than a lot of other things too. So there are things that you feel like that an AD should be doing, and they just aren't able to do that because of school district policy or state law or some school finance rule that they're having to comply with that maybe doesn't always make sense, common sense. Because sometimes there are just things like, yeah, we can't do that because of this state law or this compliance rule or this school district rule. So it's just understand it's tough. And I'm sure ADs get frustrated with some of the things they have to go through on that side of it too.
Well, I like to wrap our episodes up with what sports or activities did you do
Yeah.
And how did it impact you? I think yours
Yeah.
might be a little more obvious than some, but
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to be involved with everything. I was in speech and debate. I was in choir. I was in musicals. I played football. I played basketball. I actually flip-flopped back and forth between basketball and wrestling in my high school career. I played baseball. I ran track. So I got this amazing high school experience of being able to do everything. And I think in today's world, that's sometimes really rare. There's very few kids that have the opportunity to be involved in so many things. But again, I think things are just different now. There's just so much more expectations of kids when they're involved in the sport. It doesn't stop when the season's over. It is 365, 24/7.
yep. So definitely a lot more commitment to each individual activity now.
Yeah. And I could never, Robin, I could never probably repay the coaches, the teachers for what they poured into me and the opportunities that they gave me. I probably didn't deserve them, but they loved on me and made sure that I had a path that I didn't know I really had for myself. So I got into this because I had so many people that were so good to me, more so than they probably should have ever been, but just loved me and cared for me and made sure that this knucklehead right here has had a really pretty blessed life because of a bunch of teachers and coaches and ADs that cared about me.
Love that. Well, Scott, where can our listeners find your resources? I know you've got a lot of things out there, so give me the highlights.
So, yeah, I've written a few books, especially for your booster clubs. I wrote a book called Selling the Passion. It's about athletic development and fundraising, but everything can be found on my website at scottjarvisconsulting.com, whether it's fundraising or athletic development, or if it's strategic planning. I'm really willing to help schools and ADs or booster clubs do whatever that they need to do, or however they need to find success. I'm willing to help. And again, I'm probably the worst business person in the world because I try to do as much as I can for free.
Well, that's awesome that you give back to the community that gave to you, as it sounds like. And thank you for all the time that you put in for all the students that you impact.
Well, thank you.
The Boosted Volunteer is brought to you by Booster Hub. To find out more about Booster Hub and how our app can help you improve communications, increase engagement, raise more money, and manage your booster club responsibly, visit www.boosterhub.com. And then make sure to search for Booster Club Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Booster Hub, thanks for listening.